Hello, this is Julia Higgs. I'm your teacher for ACG 4651 Audit and Assurance Services. I'm going to be out of town this first week, so I will be delivering the lecture through recorded messages. I will be discussing from the PowerPoint slides that are also available in Blackboard. However, you can follow along with my lecture here, but they are available on Blackboard if you'd like to see them. I'm now on slide 2, and I'd like to talk to you a bit about how your auditing course is going to be a little bit different from your previous courses. In most classes in accounting, you have been in a situation where you've been given problems and you memorize a method or you learn a method, and you're given a set of rules and a framework, and you come up with a very precise calculation. Well, auditing is much different. It is a process of how we go about analyzing financial statements. It involves analytical and logical skills. It's much more conceptual in nature. And you will probably learn a lot of new words that you might not have seen before. And I tell a lot of people auditing is hard to do unless you've done it. To be a licensed CPA, which is in essence to be an auditor, one has to study under another accountant for a year in the state of Florida. I tell people auditing is often like becoming a surgeon. You wouldn't want to have a surgeon who'd never been in an operating room. Same thing with an auditor. An auditor needs to have actually worked in the field practicing the craft before they really get to understand it. So please keep that in mind as we go through this class. You may feel like you don't really grasp auditing. I think by the end of the semester you will grasp it, but it's going to seem a little bit foreign to you until we get further along in the course and work through some examples of how you actually do auditing. All right, now on slide 3, I want to talk a little bit about what auditing is. Auditing dates back actually to the medieval times. In English history, it was first appeared as part of the English guild system. And I'm a little fascinated by history, so if you'll pardon the history lesson. In the English guilds, these were trade groups like stonecutters and other practice groups where people would have to do apprenticeships. And so all the stonecutters would get together and they would make an agreement on what different members of the guild would do. And they had to have somebody who would check on the members of the guild to make sure they were following the agreed upon practice. Well, eventually those people who checked on the others developed a science behind that, which eventually led to the profession of auditing. Auditing was first required in England around 1850 when Parliament actually codified what had been part of practice for many centuries. In the United States, audits of public companies became required as part of the Securities Acts of 33 and 34. But despite these situations where auditing is mandated, auditing has been around long before it was required. And so I want to talk to you a little bit about why companies demand to have an audit even when it's not required. So go to slide 4. The most basic example of an audit is when you have a publicly traded company that sells either its stocks or bonds to the public. And in that case, you have stockholders who are the owners of the investment, and you can think of them as principals. And then you have the managers who the stockholders have given their assets to. And so the managers are acting as the agents for the principals. So some of you may have heard about principal agency theory in your finance class. But what happens here is the stockholders are not around in order to monitor the managers. So there arises something called information asymmetry. That's when there's the managers have information about the company that the stockholders don't have. So the stockholders are concerned that the managers may misuse these assets given to them. So the stockholders can hire somebody who's well trained and qualified, and that person's usually or is an auditor, to go in and monitor the behavior of the managers and the reports that managers give back to shareholders. So if you see in slide 5, this is what really happens, is more of a different sort of graphic of this. You have the absentee owner, you have the manager, and the auditor is the one that goes in to review what the managers are doing in the reports, that is the financial statements that the manager uses to report to the principals, the shareholders, how the manager has used their money. So this situation that is depicted on slide 5 here is the basic reason that audits are demanded in society. There are other theories of audit demand. One of them is, in addition to this one of them is that auditors are provide shareholders an option to sue the auditor and thus have value because if the auditors fail to do their job, the shareholders have somebody to sue. We're going to talk more about that in the chapter on legal liability. But for the purposes of the course right now, you need to understand this agency relationship and what the role of the auditor is as the intermediary between the shareholders and the manager. On slide 6, we have a very important slide. In fact, I'm going to spend a few minutes talking about this. These are some things that management, they're called management assertions. So when you assert something, you are making a statement. You're saying to others that these things are true. So one of our regulators, the Auditing Standards Board, which is a committee of the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants, they have been setting auditing standards for several decades now, and they came up with this list of 13 items and said that when management creates a set of financial statements, they're asserting the following things. Okay, the first group is that the management is making a statement about transactions and events in the period under audit. So one thing they're saying is those transactions occurred, that they're complete, they've been authorized, they're accurate, there's proper cutoff. Cutoff means that you have the transaction recorded in the proper year. This is difficult at the beginning of the year and the end of the year, especially when you have transactions that have different shipping terms. You have to make sure that whoever's paying for the shipping ends up having the item recorded properly. So perhaps you remember that from your financial accounting class when you studied things like FOB shipping point, FOB destination. Classification is whether something's recorded in the proper account. So when you read a set of financial statements, management is implicitly saying these things about the transactions that make up those financial statements. We also, according to this, management is making assertions about the account balances at the end of the year. These are the accounts that actually appear on the financial statements. So for example, they are saying that the item exists. So this is very important. If you read a financial statement and it says there's $1 million worth of inventory, that gives you comfort that, or your management is saying to you that somewhere we really have $1 million worth of inventory. It is complete, that's all we have, is just $1,000,000, but in everything that's listed on this balance sheet actually exists. We have full rights to that, and it is valued properly. So these are assertions management is making about those accounts at year end. And then finally, they are also making assertions about the presentation and disclosure of the information. So you can read from this list occurrence and rights and obligations, that if there are events or other things that have occurred that are important for the user to understand the financial statements, those have been discussed, that the disclosures and presentation is complete, it's properly classified, it's understandable, and it is disclosed fairly and at appropriate amounts. So those are some of the things that the auditor is asserting when you read a set of financial statements. Now, one of the things that's going to give you some confusion throughout this class is we actually have two regulators in accounting. And this set of assertions here is the set that one of those regulators publishes. Later in the course, we're going to go over the set that the second regulator publishes, and this is the set by what is called the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. I don't want to confuse you too much about these two, but this is one of the issues in teaching auditing that's difficult right now, is we have two different cops on the block, and they both have different laws that they follow. So let me give you a brief background of that right now so you will be prepared as we go through more of this lecture. One of the things to know is that back in the early 2000s, Congress passed what is called the Sarbanes-Oxley Act, and that legislation resulted after a couple of big accounting failures. So Congress decided that the American Institute of CPAs, who had been the group that sets auditing standards, really may not have protected the interest of investors. So they created a new regulator called the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. So as a result of that law, the PCAOB, the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board, sets audit standards for audits of public companies, and the AICPA's Auditing Standards Board sets auditing standards for private companies. So the PCAOB first opened its doors in 2003, and at that time they grandfathered in the rules of the Auditing Standards Board. Since then, the two groups have gone in different directions, and one of the areas where they're different is the Auditing Standards Board has revised the assertions that they had originally published prior to 2003. And this list that you see on slide 6 is the revised list by the Auditing Standards Board. The PCAOB, when it was formed, grandfathered in the old rules of the Auditing Standards Board, and then the PCAOB since 2003 has not changed any of the management assertions. So I believe in your textbook they give you the management assertions under the AICPA's Auditing Standards Board. That's this list of 13. And they also give you the assertions published by the Public Company Accounting Oversight Board. We are probably in class going to be using more of the list from the PCAOB because there's only 5 assertions on that list instead of the 13 that we have here. I just want to make you aware of this issue with the two regulators. We will talk about it quite a bit during this class, and I'm going to do my best to make sure that you fully understand the role of each of those two. In the meantime, please spend some time understanding these management assertions. They're very important.